It's Thursday, March the 17th. Lake level's right at 9:14. It's been going down pretty steady. Water temperatures are kind of all over the place. You'll find mid 40s to mid 50s, depends where you're at. But fishing's really good. There's a lot of different things that they're biting. Now they're not jumping in the boat, but I'd probably say there's not a lure in your boat that I don't think you can't catch a fish on right now. You just got to figure out what you want to throw and where you're going to throw it. There's still fish out there real deep in that 45, 50 foot range. There's a lot of fish right up there on the bank, especially like up in the James River. And I'm sure Long Creek and the Kings is the same way. A lot of that water's been turning over. Some of it's kind of nasty looking, but a lot of it's got good color to it, and that's warming up a lot faster, and it seems like there's a lot of buck bass that have moved up, real shallow. And, be catching them on a Ned rig up there. I'm sure you catch them on a shaky head or a jig. You get the right conditions, you catch them on like a rock crawler, wiggle wart. And if I was throwing one of those baits, I would definitely have, something with some red or orange on it, orange belly, green back. I'm throwing different colors, but just about every one has got some type of red on it or orange, somewhere. And it seems like, I still got to have a little bit of wind for that to work. You catch some jerkbait fish around some main lake secondary points. And you can still catch a lot of fish out there in the open water that are coming from the deep water out on main lake points and some of the deeper secondaries working their way back in. But the fish are really on the move. And, I wouldn't be surprised if someone told me that they seen some fish on beds, I know it's only the middle of March, but days are getting longer. We got a full moon, and that water temperature's, really jumping up there in a hurry. Now that might change with the weather. We got a front coming in tonight. Tomorrow things are going to cool down, but then it looks like it's going to warm back up again next week. But I think, a lot of the fish right now, they got, they're getting in preparation for the spawn, so they got one thing on their mind, and they're going to feed up a little bit. Because during the spawn, the fish don't feed a whole lot. To me, the best bite is before the spawn and after the spawn. So a lot of them fish are definitely moving and feeding. But on the Ned rig fish, it's like with the crankbait fish, when you find them, you find quite a few. And what I've been throwing for a Ned head, I throw a 5-fish Ultimate Lures, Ultimate Ned jig head. And a lot of the reason I throw it is I helped design it. So I really believe in it. I used all kinds of other heads, but it's got a pyramid type shape head. It's got a wire weed guard. Myself, I usually cut the weed guards off. I do get hung up a little bit more with the weed guard off, but I believe on a lot of the soft bites, I get a little bit better hook penetration without the weed guard there. Now, a couple different baits. Right now, I like a 3/16 or a 1/8 ounce, and we've got them in all 4 sizes. We've got 16th, 1/8, 3/16, and quarter. But a lot of the worms I'm using, I'm taking like a big bite. It's a super salty trick stick, and this is a dirty chartreuse, where it's got a little bit of chartreuse on the tail. Another one I like to use, I've used for years, is the Zero, which is like the elastic stretch. I basically just cut these baits in half, slide them up on there, put a little drop of super glue on them. And there's so many different things you can do with the Ned rigs. I mean, you can take a pair of scissors, split the tail so you get a little bit of action there. A PBJ will work real good as far as the colors. I like a green pumpkin with a little bit of chartreuse. Or this Zero is called Dirt. It's got watermelon on one side, green pumpkin on the other. And then if the water's got a little stain to it, I'll definitely put a little chartreuse on my tails. But, I fish this on 6-pound line, like the same type of rod I use for drop shotting. Pretty light action, medium to medium light action rod. And basically just throw it up to the bank, drag it back to the boat. A lot of the bites, you'll just feel pressure. But like I say, right now, there's a lot of buck bass moving up, and you can catch some really good some good fish on these too, especially smallmouths. But some of them might be out a little bit deeper. But you get in the right areas, it's a good time to take a kid out fishing because you can really get into a lot of fish. Now, with that weather coming in, I don't think the front's going to be a big deal. Temperature's not going to drop that much. It'll affect us more than it will the fish. But one thing to keep in mind, if we get a lot of rain, I think there's an 80% chance of storms and showers tomorrow. If we get a good heavy rain where we start having a lot of runoff in the backs of the creeks, even though the air temperature is cooler, that ground is warm, so that water coming in the backs of the creeks is probably going to be warmer than the lake water, which is going to trigger some fish into biting back there where that runoff's coming in. A lot of times what happens, it'll start, washing in nutrients, sometimes worms, and there's a lot of fish in the backs of the creeks already. So basically what that's going to do, a lot of times it'll trigger a bite, and it's a good time to throw like a chatterbait in there, a big bladed spinnerbait. It's kind of a trial and error deal, but a lot of times what you can do is look on your electronics if you're not familiar with pockets or the backs of creeks, but look at your, zoom out and look at the surroundings around the lake where there's steeper gullies. Those will be the places where the runoff's coming in. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the back of a creek. A lot of times it might be halfway in the back of a creek where up on the hills there's a ravine coming in, and it's going to get a lot of that runoff and rain gathered up and, come into a certain area. But that's something to keep in the back of your head if we get a lot of rain. I've seen it happen, a bunch in the springtime, especially we've got a good warming trend where the water's warming up, fish are starting to move. Then you get a big heavy rain that kind of shuts off the other patterns that you had, but it'll really trigger some bigger fish to bite in the backs of them pockets. And I try a reaction bait first, like I say, a chatterbait, spinnerbait. If that doesn't work, you might even try a jig. And if we get a lot of rain and you start going back into some of these pockets and creeks, you might see it all muddy and a lot of trash, leaves. Don't turn around. Just keep going back in. A lot of times when that first water comes in, it's going to take all the leaves and debris that's laying on the ground, and that'll run in first, and then the water that's behind it will be clean coming over them rocks and stuff, and a lot of times that water will get cleaner as you get further back in. So spring is here, and a lot of good things happening. Hopefully the weather stays consistent, and normally right around the 1st of April, we have fish start to come in to spawn. It just depends on, what the weather does, but the way the water's warming up right now, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if there's some bucks up there right now, trying to fan out some beds. So until next week, good luck, good fishing.